when you are CEO of a company, I'm sure many of people told you that you're alone. If you fail, not a problem. The worst thing to do is not to move. That digital is not in our company a department. It's not e-commerce. It's not marketing. It's just a tool. I am always at home for dinner, spending time with the kids, always doing sports with the kids. So it's family first.
Welcome to Sports and Outdoor Mentors. In today's episode, I chat with Romain Millet, the CEO of the Millet Mountain Group, which includes both the Millet and Lafuma brands. As his name suggests, Romain has a strong family connection to the business, as his great-grandparents founded Millet in 1921. The business now employs 700 people, sells in 40 countries, and generates revenue of approximately 100 million euros. As well as working in the outdoor sports industry, Romain has experience in both the luxury and fast fashion sectors. We talk about this experience, what it's like being a CEO, the role of digital in business today, his time in China, the importance of family, and many other topics. But before we jump into the episode, I have a favor to ask. Please hit subscribe or follow. This helps us grow the channel so we can elevate the content and continue to bring insights from other sports and outdoor industry leaders. Thanks for your support and enjoy the episode. Romain, given your family history, I think it would somehow be expected almost that you'd spent your whole career within the outdoor industry. But of course you spent time in consulting, in fashion, in luxury. So when you kind of look back at that time, what did you take away from that, and what is helping you today in what you're doing in leading the Millet business today?
So maybe you heard about the story, but in a very nutshell, it's been the company was founded more than 100 years ago, developed by my grandmother and his son. She has two sons, my grandfather and his brother. They developed the company, reaching the top of the Annapurna with a team in the 50s. And then they sold out the company in 74. So that's one of the reasons I'm not born into this company. I have the chance to have the name, but I'm born in 79. So actually I just had the very nice story with my grandfather when he was retired. So they sold the company, and it's always been somehow in my mind to sort of professional dream that maybe one day we'll find out a way to bring the church in the middle of the village, as we said in French. Say it in another way, which is just bringing the company back to the family. So that's something we had in mind with my uncle, and that's what happened 3 years ago. So 50 years after the sold out. And in some ways there was a chance. It's a chance, number one, because for me it makes sense in everything I've done before. And give me a passion today to be the entrepreneur and leading this company. It's also a chance because, as you said, and that's how I answer your question, I've learned a lot in doing all these things and in going into fashion, in living in Shanghai, in China, and being in luxury. So approaching many topics that I think are up to date in the outdoor industry today. How do you reach your consumer? What does really direct consumer mean? How do you reach China? Beautiful country, full of nature, but in some ways small market today compared to many other, for instance, luxury markets. So it's for all of this, I guess, those experiences has been a chance for me, because today, when we raise the question internally, I have the passion. I won't say the skills, but at least the passion to think at and help the team going into retail, going into to the consumer, going into China, looking at other industry, forecasting, etc., etc. So it's really a chance from a personal note, but I guess for the professional note for the company.
Interesting, yeah. And as you mentioned, the company is now 102 years old. So, and that, I would imagine, working in a company with such a rich heritage that is also clearly personally connected to you and your family, does that somehow bring extra pressure on you, or do you maybe put pressure on yourself because of that?
It's positive pressure. Well, at least since I have white hair, I was thinking of that when I was younger, and for sure it was negative pressure, because you're like, wow, it's heavy. I mean, it's a heavy backpack, if I may have this image, and not anymore today. It's positive pressure. It's a motivation actually, and really feeling today that having the name is not a burden, not at all. I mean, it's a chance, and it helps a lot the company to have a strong culture. And I've been, it's one of the reasons I'm feeling good today is the values of this company, they've not changed. And I think one of the reasons some company can last 100 years, it's often because the values don't change. And our values don't change. And when you plug in, for me, it's the same value that the one I raised with my family. I mean, my grandfather basically had the same values at work and at home. Mm. And so I feel good. And also, I guess I can help the company to reinforce the culture, to reinforce in values, because that's in my blood.
Yeah. Interesting. And what would you say are those values in terms of what are the most important ones that you think as yourself and the organization live and breathe on I'm sure a daily basis?
But I think if you work in this industry, you have to be passionate about the mountain and nature. I mean, that's probably the first motivation on that. If we all think of that for the one that are working in the industry and will listen to this speech, or the one willing to, I'm pretty sure that one of the reason they want to come is that they just love that. Mm. They love sports, they love outdoor, they love nature. So that's number one. And this passion, of course, is not only for nature. Then it's a passion to develop the business, to bring people together, to raise them, etc. And the second point, which definitely China helped me to reinforce, is curiosity. And really, especially my grandfather and his brother, they were really curious. And I really believe these values is super important. And and especially in the world we're living into, where information is coming to you. It's some ways you have algorithms that decide how to feed your curiosity, but actually it's not curiosity. It's just bring what they learn from you from what you did yesterday. Yeah. So this being said, I guess curiosity is a very modern value that we all need to have personally, and being in some ways happy to be surprised every day. And in these two values, of course, we have other and trying, for instance, to be humble. But these two are the main ones. And that's something that, for me, as a person, it's values that really are strong for me, but also into the companies. And often you're better when you don't have disconnection in between the values you have at home and the one you have at work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned your time in China. I think I can only imagine what it would have been like, but when you kind of reflect back on those 5 years there, what did you take away from that? And maybe even talk a little bit about what took you there in the first place and why that was a decision that you took, because I think quite a big decision for you and your family.
Of course. So my wife was pregnant. She was in 8 months when we moved there. So, when you leave to China, in fact, we decide to quit and live in China, it's above a family decision. That's not a work decision. Of course, the reason it happened is just like my boss before just tell me, I want you in China in 1 month. That's it. Do you want to go or not? I mean, it always happen like this. Really? But you always have the opportunity to say yes and no. I mean, of course. And for us, we were like, yes, of course. We definitely want to go. But we had to think at it from a family standpoint because she was pregnant. And it was a very difficult decision for her and very courageous for her more than for me, definitely more. So that was the context. The decision was made like this. So you have 1 month to decide. We decided in 1 week, but the only reason was a family project more than a personal project. The second point is that being there the first week, I understand I had to speak Chinese. And it's super important. It's not to speak Chinese, but it's when you go into a country, and I think that you're perfectly an example of that. when you go and decide to live in a country which is not the one you're born into, definitely you have to make some effort to adapt to the country culture. And especially for French people, it's a good learning, I hope, at least. And therefore, when you go into China, you have to learn Chinese. That's it. And that's the best way to discover the country, the best way you can understand the culture. You will never understand 100%, but at least you understand a bit more than if you come and speak English to a Chinese guy. Mm-hmm. So that was the second takeaway I had. And the third one, which I learned a lot, it's and maybe we'll move to, I know that's one of the topics you want to discuss, but the way you are, leadership and leadership in China, for me, it was surprising at the beginning, but it's actually something that I really developed myself a lot, and that is helping me a lot today. So basically, deciding to go to China is above all a family decision. Work is in French we say a pretext, or let's say an excuse in English. Yeah. Second point, need to adapt there and try to understand and make all the efforts you can to adapt to the country, especially language. A third point, every time try to take all the positive things you can from the people you work with, and I've learned so much from Chinese people, so much. And I'm pretty sure it's not because it's China. I'm pretty sure you can, if someone living in the US, I'm sure he can get the same way of thinking or the same methodology, and you can do that probably everywhere else.
When you think about having the opportunity to work professionally in another country, is that something that as a hiring manager, as a leader of people, that you see as a advantage with somebody that has maybe had that experience in working in another culture?
Definitely, it's definitely an advantage.
Yes.
And I have to say, above all, in the outdoor industry. For me, outdoor is, as I said before, it's positive and negative in the sense that passion is positive and negative, and outdoor is full of passionate people. One of the disadvantages of being passionate is basically you always stay in the industry you're passionate about, and so that means that you go from one brand to another or one retailer to another, and that's of course I think outdoor. But there are other examples. Car industry is another example. Therefore, in terms of innovation, of progress, whatever, it's not only on R&D. I mean, in terms of managing people, in terms of learning from people, and learning from other best practices you can see in the business. It's more limited. You learn less. So for me, and even if we're we're a small company based in the Alps, 700 people, so it remains a small company. Even for us, it's super important that when we hire people or when we develop people that have been there, we try to help them learning new expertise or new culture in, for instance, being expat for a while somewhere in another subsidiary. So it's super important, and it definitely brings more value. So, there have been so many studies, and I'm sure you know much better than myself on that, but sociology about putting people that are different into one group will create much more value than only the same people, and then diversity, let's say in another way.
Exactly.
It's definitely creating value, and having only white old men like you and myself, if I may, will create less value than if we people that are different.
And I think that my feeling is that working in another country as well, another benefit is that when you're then leading people in other countries, as you do, I mean, you're humbly saying that, it's a small company with 700 people that, a lot of those are in France, but, you have manufacturing operations in different countries, and I know in Asia you have some big markets. So my feeling is that having that experience of also worked abroad, it also probably helps you in terms of then leading people in all of those different cultures.
Yes, and also when I was working before coming back in other companies, I had the chance also to work in subsidiaries and not always in HQ. And when you work in a subsidiary, that's the best way to know all the mistakes of the HQ. You're always complaining about HQ. So that's that also. So that means that for me, having worked in a subsidiary and not in HQ, and in countries with different culture, indeed, in some ways, I can understand some frustration or some expectation from people not being with us here in France. That's one. And the second point the second comment I wanted to make to this question is the fact that on the other side, it's very important for me, for a brand, but also for people, by the way, to know where you come from and to say it and to claim it. I mean, you cannot say if you're born in the Alps that you come from California. It will never happen. Nobody will believe in that. It doesn't work. So let's make an advantage and let's be proud of being from where we were born. For us, it's Annecy, here in the Alps, Annecy and Chamonix. It's very important to claim it. So where I want to go is that this second comment means that when I go in Japan or when I go in factoring in Tunisia or in France, for instance, of course I'm claiming that I'm French. I mean, you can hear that from my French accent in English, or the way I will behave, the way I will, eat. So let's assume that. So let's say that. Let's make a strength of that. So I think for me, the two learnings I had from this experience is one, I know what subsidiaries think of HQ in terms of expectation and frustration, and let's make a strength of who we are. And these two things are often important.
And when you look back at your career today, is there any one point of your career where you think, okay, that's really helping me today in addressing the challenges that you're facing leading an outdoor business in a market that is challenged right now? It's not an easy market.
I'm spontaneously, I would even have two ideas. Number one is digital in China, which for me has always been more advanced than everywhere else in the world. Definitely. It's deeply into it. I have one anecdote. When I came in China and I was renting a house to an 80-year-old woman, and then at that time it was the first week, of course, and I didn't speak Chinese. And I asked her, how do I pay the bill for electricity and gas? And she basically showed me WeChat and a QR code.
Yeah.
And that's it. Fuck. I mean, it's for me in France, you have an invoice, either you call or you give your credit card, and then it takes hours. And then
a check. Come on, a check.
Yeah, and then maybe there will have a check. Maybe you will have a bank transfer somehow. Anyway. She was 80 years old and was paying the bill in scanning on her WeChat.
Yeah.
The QR code. Done. So that's one anecdote, and you can imagine it's everywhere. So this I learned a lot, and therefore it helps us a lot into transformation into digital, which basically means that digital is not in our company a department. It's not e-commerce. It's not marketing. It's just a tool that like CSR, by the way, everybody who from HR, from finance, from of course e-com and so on, they all use digital, and COVID has helped for that. So that's one example. The second point is more personal, but I'm very as a manager, or I've been CEO for 15 years now. It's very different to be CEO of the company that has your name, that has been run by your family in one point, than being CEO of company that you're an employee and you've been CEO for a time, but there will be something else. I'm not saying that there won't be something else for me after me. Yeah, maybe there will. But the way I'm managing the company, or the way I'm thinking or I'm taking decisions, it's very different and it's very clear based on our culture, or the reason why of the company, number one, and one goal, which is linking to our history, which is perennity. So I don't know the name in English, but basically longevity.
Yeah.
Does it mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically being sure that in 100 years, Millet will still help people achieving a dream in mountain. That's the only thing that makes me take decisions. So there is never a time when I'm taking a decision that could, voluntarily or not, help my own interest in my career.
Yeah.
Not anymore. So that's two things. Maybe there are many other things, but
yeah.
Spontaneously I would say these two.
So in addition to your role, obviously here, you're also vice president at the OSV. So maybe, as probably some of the listeners and audience don't know what the OSV is, so maybe it would be great if you could talk a little bit or introduce the OSV and talk a little bit about what you're doing there and also why, because I think obviously you give up your own time to do that. So we'd just be interested to understand why you do that as well.
Of course, OSV is basically the French association representing all the brands involved into the outdoor. There is 500 companies that are part of the OSV, but it's not anymore only brands. 60% are brands, so 300 brands, but also 200 that are other companies that could bring benefits to the brands that are part of the OSV. It's 12 people working for the association, which basically means it's a very sane, stable association, and it's not always like this, and financing coming from private and public. It's based in Annecy, just close by here. It's one of the successful associations, I guess, in Europe, especially because they found a business model. And the business model is, of course, like traditional association, to represent the brand, to claim, for instance, during COVID was useful. But it's also to bring service, to help. And especially for companies, either startups, who need many things. I mean, you're a founder, you have a pen and a paper and a garage, because it looks like a garage. It's super important to create a company. But joke apart, you're alone. So you need the content, you need other services. So they bring that. Definitely. Another example is for a medium-sized company who wants to profit from synergies, logistics, basic things, but super important. Logistics, e-commerce skills, either market studies, many things that just we're several people buying the same studies, sharing it, and of course there are synergies. And there are another example is HR, which I'm sure you know about, where basically there are a lot of people looking for jobs or brands putting some some announcement onto this platform, and really it's becoming a meeting point for HR in the outdoor industry. So it's super interesting association, which of course Millet has been one of the founders with many other well-known brands. On a person, because you asked me then why I'm involved. Definitely I'm involved. I mean, it takes some time. But number one, I think it's important that brands like us in France, where we are market leader, we are bringing, we are part of it. We are helping the industry to develop, to professionalize. Second reason is that there are some topics even more and more important, especially CSR, where I personally believe that 1 + 1 = 3. So basically, we should tie it up. We have exactly the same goal in terms of CSR. All the brands, we want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So definitely, there are things we can do together for the same goal. It could be different on other topic. Innovation is a tricky topic because sometimes we compete, of course. CSR, not at all. I mean, it's the same story. So it's becoming more and more important to be part of association like this. Third point, just fun. It's nice. I mean, it's nice to see people from the industry. We basically all have we're happy to meet together. I mean, it's a good moment. And I think at work, it's also important to have pleasure.
Yeah.
So it's also a driver.
Yeah. Great. So who are the people that have, would you say, influenced you the most professionally?
Well, tricky one, this one. Many, a few ones. Number one, my wife. Of course. I mean, for many reasons that are quite obvious. I'm not sure I could list, and we don't have the time that I list all the reasons why. Second, people, my uncle, with whom we partner together in being a majority stakeholder now into this company. He's been a mentor for me. Third one, two CEOs that have helped me every time in my career. Philippe Joffard, who used to run the Groupe La Fuma, Roland Beaumanoir, who is the leader of Beaumanoir Group in fast fashion, and Frédéric Arnault, who is the CEO of Tagueia. Those three, because they've been my boss, so in some way they had confidence, and they give me confidence and project, and they help me raising. So those people has helped me. That are close people. Of course, on the other side, all the young team. And I'm not saying that because they all do not influence, but the young, because they help me not being too old and to feed my curiosity and to help me thinking. And it was the case in China. It's every day the case here in Annecy. So this team as well. Finally, like many people, I'm reading books and newspaper. And you would always find some leaders into the other industry or into, I would say, the media part. Could be sports guy, could be, I don't know, philosopher or whatever. There are a few ones that, of course, will inspire you one way or another. Give you one example. Recently, two athletes at Millet. Sophie Lavaux, who is the first French climbing the 8,000 meters, the 14 ones. I mean, talking with that girl, just a great moment. And another one who's becoming a friend, Charles Duboulot, who is one of our athletes, having him on the phone probably every week. We don't have the same life, huh? And I'm learning a lot from Charles for that. Voilà.
Yeah. You mentioned there a couple of those people you've named are, you'd almost consider them mentors. So what value does that give you, having somebody like that as a mentor that you speak to maybe regularly or irregularly, I don't know, but, what do you gain from that?
The climate is confident, so you can say things. I mean, the militant we are or we were not 100% aligned, huh? But definitely there could be a discussion that is without any personal emotion. So that helps you thinking. Second point, linked, but when you are CEO of a company, I'm sure many of people told you that you're alone, and you cannot, of course, when you have a problem or even solution, it's not easy to share it with your comex or to share it with your board, because if it's a question, then they will, he's always raising question, never have a solution. I want someone who is driving me, and maybe not. And having some ways or some people with whom you can just share ideas, and they will probably say, it's stupid, or no, why not? You should go that, or you should contact that guy. I know that guy, you give him a call. That helps.
In earlier stages of your career, did you also have mentors? I'm just wondering whether mentors have played let's say, a consistent or constant role through your career.
A bit less, because I was in a very competitive, competing environment, which was M&A, bank and consulting. So but it's changing a lot. So it's different. It's not normal life in some way. But on the other side, maybe that's your next question, but I'm trying, I'm not the guy I listed already, but if I can help, I'm doing it with pleasure. And often I'm not of any help, but if I can, I'm sort of giving my time for that, not only OSE.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Let's maybe move on to leadership, and we'll come back actually to a point that you raised about China and about the learnings that you had of experiencing life working in China with leaders, and the fact that the approach is probably rather different. So can you maybe expand a little bit on that and what it taught you and what your takeaways?
Many things, but number one, let's be clear, China is less vertical than we are in Europe in terms of management. Governance are different. And, often in Europe or in US probably, but in Western countries, we have the feeling that in China, it's Laoban. That's the name in Chinese. Laoban has to decide, and that's it. Not totally wrong. but not totally right. It's the case for the board, where definitely decisions are made, but as a part of a company, you have actually much more freedom than we have in Europe and that we have in US, because this company, this country is based on test and learn. It's a growing country. Basically, when you have growth, economic growth, you can make mistakes. We've been living at least in Europe, where the growth has been limited for 30 years. We're talking about unemployment. That's something that you've never heard about until recent years. But when I was there, that was not the case in China. It was growing, never heard about unemployment. So that means that if you fail, not a problem. You have to test, you have to learn where I want to go. And that's the takeaway, is that the worst thing to do is not to move. You have to move. Where you go left, you go right. You have the right to go in two directions, to make mistakes. But at least don't be sad. Don't move. You have to move. You have to do something. And that's something that I think here sometimes, always trying to be sure before moving, we want to be sure that we won't fail. Otherwise someone will tell you it's not good. That's absolutely not the way Chinese work. So that's one takeaway. So, and I believe as a leader sometimes, of course, we have to make the last decision and to behave like a Laoban. But we have to give sort of freedom to the team. And when you do that, often in Europe, we do that on a project management based. You can see that people are more happy. So that means they are happier, so that means that they're looking for that. And I think if the company is well prepared, if you have a bit of process and if you hire the good people, you will do maybe 49% of mistake, but 51% of good things. If I'm correct in mathematics, it should go into the right direction. So that's one. Second point linked to this, which is very difficult for me, by the way, still now, is that it's 80-20. In Asia, we always focus on 80-20. So that means that you focus on the 80% that will deliver what you're looking for. And of course, there will be 20% that you're not prepared with. That could be negative impact. But at the end, you spend your time on the 80% and not thinking at solution to the 20 other percent. Sometimes in Europe, in our companies, management-wise, we could be always focusing on, but now on this, we tried it 30 years ago. And on this, I'm sorry, it cannot work. Look at the IT system is not prepared for the case of this and this and this and this happened. I mean, it's snow in July. It's highly probable that we don't have snow in July for the couple of months coming. So that's what I mean. It's not focusing on things that we already know are not as probable as the other part. So let's focus energy on what we believe will work. So that's the second point. And the third takeaway I would say is those ecosystems. I've always been very impressed by by those ecosystems that has been built by all these companies, where they all have minority stake in one company, another one, and it's a sort of network that has been built from an equity standpoint, but often just from a people standpoint. And it's a logic of circle, in China, and that means that things are connected. And I think in our world, Western countries, sometimes we could be a bit more connected. And I mean, for me, for instance, I'm very open to other brands. And I'm sure a lot of people could testimony about that. And I'm super happy to have a lunch with the CEO of another brand. I mean, because we have a lot to learn together. And market is sufficiently big. World is sufficiently big. Our market share industry are all pretty small because it's quite customized. So in some ways, confidentiality, of course, we should respect some, but it's not a big problem. And it's nice to talk to someone from the industry having another vision. So that's things we could do a bit more, especially on CSR.
Yeah. So as you said, going back to OSV, that must then play a important role in that, or can play an important role in that, for sure. Yeah. Initiating those collaborations and conversations. Yeah. When I reflect of the changes that have taken place in the, let's say, the leadership landscape over the last 3 years. I mean, since the pandemic, somehow leadership has become quite a bit more complex, and clearly one of the topics that is what makes leadership even more complex is the hybrid work model. How do you address that? How do you and the team address that? Because I think, I know in my previous life, I this was a challenge from a personal point of view and a leadership point of view. So, and I talk to a lot of people about this topic, and there are a lot of different opinions, and I think there's no black or white. So yeah, what's your kind of approach? How do you address this topic?
But first, it depends on your company culture, structure, history. So what I'm going to say is only for Millet, and it's not a MBA course lesson, management lesson. I have no theory on that, no proof of what I'm going to say, no data about what I'm going to say, but just a ressenti, as we said in French, an impression of at Millet, a sharing of our best practices, our learnings. As I said, we're a medium-sized company, which quite centralized here in Nancy with a few subsidiaries. So based on people relationship. Fortunately, we invested into digital tool a few years, not to say a few months before the pandemic. And that helps, of course, a lot remoting. Otherwise, it would have been another story. To develop a collection without some tools would have been much more difficult, I guess. But fortunately, we had that. But despite this, our company process, way of working remains physical. People in a room with pros and cons. People having an opinion on everything and management of consensus and all of this. But this being said, it worked. And then this pandemic came and everybody was stuck at home. And then we were full remote. A few ones here, but mostly full remote. What we can see at that time is that, of course, it was nice for maybe for a few weeks, for a few months. I mean, on professional side, I'm not saying on a personal, another story. But on professional, not bad not to take transportation, your car, the bus, less expensive and so on. But rapidly, when in between the two lockdown in France, and I came exactly at that time here in the company. That's when I joined. I can feel people super happy, even if they were wearing a mask, washing the hands every 30 minutes and having all this process, super happy to meet each other. So for me, that was a symbol that being 100% full remote for me is not the solution yet. It's not our culture. That's not the way this corps social, this group of people is willing to work. But on the other side, we learned that having some people at home help them concentrating on few things, doing things that they cannot do because I don't know, for many reasons. Here, there are things they are more efficient doing at work. There are things you do better at work. And that's the way we've decided to organize the company. And it's been now a year and a half where we have 2 days remote, 3 days at work, like many companies. What we're trying to do is not only to have qualitative comments on that, but also some quantitative data, which basically means having people doing a timesheet or measuring the efficiency of their work at home and at work. So that will help us from an HR standpoint to say, well, now we believe, looking at the timesheet of everybody, that maybe 3 days at home or 1 day at home is the best thing for the company and for you guys. And that's much easier to answer to some question we could have, for instance, from the social committee that we have in France, where sometimes we have people raising the hand and say, can we be full remote? On the other side, we could have other ones saying, can I be 100% at work? We cannot take it from an individual standpoint. So the only way to answer is to measure and to take the time to measure. So that's what we do. So it depends on company, culture, organization, and standpoint. For us, 100% remote doesn't work. 3-2 is the good solution, but this could evolve in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, sorry, I forgot to mention that. It depends on the subsidiary. Everything I just said for HQ. In our factories, it's either in or out. It's quite binary,
Yeah.
1 or 0. And in Japan, it's a bit different as well. So you have to adapt to country culture, of course,
Exactly.
and regulation.
Yeah. So when you think about your role today, what would you consider to be your most important task on a broad level?
The reason why, and sort of ambassador of the reason why, because I have the same name as the company, because we are looking at the long term, and the reason why is in long term. So this is probably the most important thing. Of course, depending on the company planning and the date of the year, we could have budget, strategy planning, and innovation, CSR. All those topics are taking some time, but on every day, I meet people, internally or externally, every day. Everything I say, the way I behave, has to be 100% aligned with our reason why.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's I think that's it.
So it's really that vision, and somehow it's that North Star that, everybody is hopefully following in the organization.
And which is sometimes it's not easy because, as you can imagine, it's a family-owned company. So sometimes we could be there are maybe less process sometimes than a company that is listed on a stock exchange. It's different, which basically means that sometimes I can validate a product or just come to the R&D and say, well, this weekend I tested this backpack when doing ski touring and it was great. And so, of course, they are this. And in some well-structured company, a process will never allow a CEO to do that for many reasons. Here we do that. And so there are cons in doing that. Of course, it could create tension, but if I do that, it will always be in line with the reason why of the company. And so people can understand why I'm doing that then.
Mm-hmm. I guess as the outdoors is clearly a part of, who you are as well and what you do outside of work, how do you find the balance between family life and professional life? Or maybe it should be, do you find the balance? But if you do, then how do you?
No, definitely. Definitely, and that's super fun. So first, my wife is working and is probably much more talented than I am, and have a very successful career in digital, doing remote almost 100% time. So that's also why I have some background about that. I am always at home for dinner, except if there is a dinner, professional dinner, but 90% of the time at home for dinner, spending time with the kids, always doing sports with the kids. So it's family first. Second point, sports is really, I need that. Otherwise, I'm just, I have other emotion. So I'm doing my 5 to 10 hours sports every week in the outdoor probably. And so therefore, this being said, that means that first, of course, the agenda is full. Hard to have a casual lunch. No, I don't do that. And probably because of China, by the way, because we are never doing that. Second point, you sleep a bit less. Have the chance not to sleep too much. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm not suffering at all.
Yeah,
and
that's
really
good.
not. Now, for instance, it's been back from vacation. Now, of course, I'm French, so as good French, I took some vacation in August. But when I was back, I was super happy on Monday to be here. Super happy, and so that means that the balance should be correct.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great example, because I think it's very easy as a leader to transmit the not the right approach on this sort of topic. And people do watch for sure. They do kind of see and think, okay, you know, what's my manager doing? You know, how much holiday are they taking? You know, does that mean it's okay for me?
I will never work after dinner. I will never. It happens, but rarely, and for good reason.
Yeah.
I work after dinner or during the weekend. Never send email during the weekend because you need to respect people. They will call during the weekend, of course, except if there is an emergency. But when I'm doing it, and I'm not saying that because it's good to say that, when I'm doing it, I'm really, I will apologize 100% because really I'm not proud of. If I have to do that, I'm really not proud of it, and I believe that I've not been efficient.
What's your relationship with technology? I mean,
I'm a sort of geek, and you know, it's just like you have your mantra, or sometimes something that hit your mind. Those days is ChatGPT, but it could have been another topic. But it's been 6 months. I'm passionate about ChatGPT, so I'm playing with that. So that and the same on some product or on one technology or one fabric. But it's like a kid. It's a sort of passion. There is absolutely no structure in my approach to our innovation or to technology. I'm not engineer at all. So often I don't understand at all how the technology is built, and I know that I will never understand. Just trying as a consumer or as a fan the technology into our business. That's it. Japan for that, where we are. It's a big country for us. And every time I go in Japan, I'm learning a lot about technology. Often ideas coming from that, specifically because of Japan. And also because it's when you travel, I believe, so when you're out of work and home, that you really think and that you really, your whole body, your mental, every sense is able to feel something.
Yeah.
And that's where you can remark some technology, you can read articles and so on. Often during traveling and absolutely not structured, just like a kid playing a video game.
But are you able to use technology from a professional perspective to help you be more efficient, or?
No, it's very intuitive.
Okay.
And I'm testing, but then when I believe there is something, I will handle it to someone, and we have people here in the company very good for that, and they can really understand if it's possible to plug in, will it bring value to the company, and often they say, well, it's completely stupid, just get rid about this technology. But sometimes they have the same ideas and we share it together. But it's intuitive, not structured, and given to the right professional when we believe it could be interesting. For instance, ChatGPT is a very good example of that. We're thinking at it, testing it, and I have no conclusion about it. The only thing I can say is that we're using it.
Yeah. When you think about the next, 3 to 5 years, what do you see as the biggest challenge that the industry needs to face or address?
Being seen as I said before, being seen as a solution, not a problem into CSR. Finding solution to that. I mean, it's all the industry is based on going outside. That's the route is outdoor. So if the outdoor is changing, and we can see that much quicker than expected by any scientist, that's what we have to face. And I believe we, as a small company, Millet, will never be able to find solution alone or during the time we have. So focusing on CSR, which means climate, but not only. I think we start it changing, but we often forget biodiversity into the thinking. So it's a lot about reduction of CO2, sometimes compensation of it, and maybe it's either net zero, regenerative. Be careful with all those words because I'm not sure everybody understands what does it mean. But in any case, it's related to CO2 and climate. I believe we sometimes forget about biodiversity. You might know that 70% of the species disappeared over the last 100 years, 70%, which is just a drama. And you never know what is the egg, what is the chicken. So let's think at that. So So basically, it's finding a solution all together, the industry player, not only the brand, the retailers, for climate and biodiversity. And I think a second topic, this could only work if we find a way to, I don't know if it's train or educate the right word, consumer.
Mm-hmm.
It starts from consumer. And there are a few initiatives from brands saying that. But we need to bring them with us. I mean, it's not only brands or retailers or fabric suppliers. It's at the end, how do we behave? Do we really change every time there is a new color? Shall we repair? Where do we pay attention really to where it has been produced? What's the electricity that has been needed to build this fabric or build this end of product, etc., etc. So consumer are not enough, to my point of view, into the equation today.
Yeah.
And we will need to find a way to bring them with us. Well, so that's for me the most challenging part for the industry, because otherwise all the rules will change.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean there won't be any mountain. There will be. We're partnering, for instance, with a scientist who is looking at the glacier des Bossons in Chamonix.
Yeah.
Very interesting study. He just published something in Nature newspaper, a very famous scientist. And basically what he's saying is that when the glacier is getting out, it's not only rocks, there is life coming out. Trees, lake, but it's changing. So how do you adapt to that? That could bring opportunities, but also a lot of risk. When you have a lake above a village, how does it, in Tignes, for instance, could bring issues as well. So it's this that we need to pay attention to as a top priority.
How do you, with your team, with your leadership team, decide, okay, this is where we're going to focus? Because, as you pointed out, I mean, it's such a complex topic with many things that many of us don't understand. So deciding we're going to go left or right, and this is where we're going to, it's tough. It's difficult.
It depends on the topic. There are some sub-segments into CSR that are well studied, with data analysis. You can modelize. Climate is if you do, for instance, SBTI projection, exactly carbon audit and that kind of things. There are data. Of course, you can criticize assumption, but at least there are assumptions. So based on that, you can measure. Of course, when you measure, there are obvious action that comes from data, and it's not anymore a question of opinion, that's just a fact. And what we all know in the industry is that most of the CO2 is linked to the energy you use in order to produce the raw material first and then to transform the raw material into a finished product. For us, it's 90% of the problem. So, it's just a fact from carbon audit that we've been doing for more than 5 years now. So it's quite consistent. So Here we have a way to federate people on that topic. Then it's more tricky. Biodiversity, super complicated. It start to have because it's less mature. So you start to have in the industry a few like SBTI, but for nature, for biodiversity, you start to have some measurement, but early stage, more difficult. So indeed, you have to choose one left or right, but at least you choose. I mean, it's like greenwashing. I mean, in some ways, greenwashing sometimes is useful because it brings climate issues to everybody. Wrong words, bad advertising, sometimes even misleading, but bring it. Some people who never care about it, in some ways, with a fake advertising, have heard that there is a climate problem. So it's not completely a problem. I'm not a fan of greenwashing. I'm just saying
no, I understand.
It means that if you go left or if you go right, in some ways you can see some positive anyway. But here, biodiversity, we're really early stage, but we will make a bet and at least we will do one. Finally, consumer. Here it's difficult. The way we found is the positioning of the brand. So finding the the tone of voice that you're using to advertise your product. But let's do that with CSR. And for instance, we're launching renting with Millet. Then we don't say too much because we want to get data in order to be able to say to the consumer who wants to rent, look, if you do that, you will reduce your impact for this or this reason. So that's the way, the three ways we will do it. But you're right. People has an opinion, especially when you're French, as you know, we have an opinion on everything. The only way to do is have a clear goal and measure it.
So, favorite piece of sports or outdoor gear, and it's not allowed to be
favorite piece of
sports or outdoor gear, and it's not allowed to be Millet. That's way too easy. Because you must own something that isn't Millet. Otherwise, I'm going to call your wife.
Important, at least, DVA.
Okay.
Security.
Yeah.
Those days, because mountain is changing, everything related to security. I mean, I've been raised with people going, I was doing skittering when I was young. Never had an helmet and a security DVA somewhere on me. I mean, 30 years ago, we don't care. I mean, cycling with a helmet, look at the Tour de France in the 80s.
Yeah.
Now it's freezing. And so that's a favorite thing, not because I like it, just because I need it for my security. So I would say that.
Okay. And we talked already about...
And also backpack me. Oh, sorry.
Of course, that's a given. And favorite piece of tech? Hardware or soft technology? Can be hardware or software.
It's
tough.
Strava.
Okay.
That's probably the thing where I'm not a big fan of social network, but and I have to say that this one is from a personal and professional those days, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
But personally, probably I'm going on Strava 3 days a day.
Okay.
3 times a day.
3 times a week?
More a day.
3 times a day?
Yeah,
okay.
Just to look at Strava. Strava is something that is engaging you a lot.
Okay, interesting.
Good software.
If you could recommend a book or a resource for somebody to read that maybe is working not in the industry, that would like to get into the industry, something that could give them some insights or shed some light onto the sports and the outdoor industry?
Well, like everybody who wants to go into the business, there are a few books from entrepreneurs. When Chouinard is the best example, for instance, and of course it's common to say, and of course a lot of people have read it, but it's worthwhile. I mean, you need to read one of these two. And listening, for instance, the story in between Patagonia and North Face, there is a podcast about it that is very interesting.
Okay.
Super interesting on that. It's called Guerre de Business in French.
Okay.
And they talk about those two companies that have been founded actually by 2 friends. And the story behind them is really quite interesting. And now it's big companies, but listening to them. And so the book of Chouinard and this. Second point, The Great Wall. It's a film with Tommy Cadwell, the story of a climber.
Okay.
Incredible. If you want to be passionate about climbing and understand why people are so much interesting about climbing, go for that. And last point, books of Messner. I have to say that often mountain book could be a bit boring. Everybody can say that. Messner is not.
Okay. Oh, great. I'll put the links to all of those in the
thank you,
in the show notes.
The down wall, sorry, I said the Great Wall, but this is not. This is
I was thinking that was back to China.
The down wall.
Down wall, okay. I'll check and make sure I get the right ones. And then if you could give future leaders in our industry 3 pieces of advice, what would you give them? What would you tell them?
First, don't be surprised if sometimes you will feel we are old-fashioned. We are. Second, be passionate, because that's the reason we are old-fashioned. And third, push the wall, because we need innovation, the modernity in the way we structure our company, in the way we are open to the world. So I think this is an industry where we can listen to people. So don't be shy.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Romain. I really appreciate your time. It's been super interesting, and I'm sure the audience and listeners will get a lot out of it. So thank you very much. Thanks for watching this episode of Sports and Outdoor Mentors. We'd love to hear from you, so please leave your comments, including recommendations for future guests and questions you'd like them to answer. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, please don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again for your support, and see you soon.